2:30, everybody, or just slightly after, and we've got a pretty chunky agenda to get through in the 3 hours of this afternoon. This first session this first session of the workshop is a public session. That doesn't mean that they're going to be live streamed. It means that they're going to be recorded, and afterwards the recordings will be put online. As I understand, all the documentation for the public session's already been put online. So I welcome Graham on board, and I think I see Claire there as well. So I'll declare the meeting open. Firstly, I'll ask if there's any apologies. Yes.
We have apologies from Councillor Linwood and Councillor Fanini Titi.
Thank you. I also note that we don't have our Chief Executive here today, and so while they're not an apology, I assume that, but just for noting, so thank you. Can I have someone move that we accept those apologies? Moved by Councillor Svenning, accepted by Dan. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you, that's carried. What I'll do now, because we've got quite a bit of content to get through, is that the first session of these workshops, we're always going to have a look at the finances, and I'll hand over to Amanda to speak to those, noting that they're not full and final, but they just give us a really good overview in a timely manner that we can discuss. So, Amanda.
Thank you. Yeah, that was going to be my first point. Obviously, our focus right now is finalising the 30 June 26 full year results and getting ready for preparing the annual report, getting ready for audit in the next few weeks. So until that is closed, our opening balance sheet is not finalised, which impacts on the balance sheet for the month of 31 July. So I haven't actually put a balance sheet in there. I've just more touched on what the individual numbers look like within it. In terms of the P&L, mentioning there that revenue is 2 million behind forecast, but that is really just because our revenue, the grants and donations, we just get the number and divide it by 12 type thing. It's not clear exactly when funding will come for some of those projects, like the grandstand. There's a few steps to take place before we start spending on those projects, so the revenue will come in once we have spent. So it's matching the expenditure, so we haven't received it yet. And operating expenses overall are about 500,000 below budget, which is just reflecting a bit of timing differences there, taking a bit to kick into that new financial year. Personnel costs are on track, depreciation's in line with budget. We will have a revaluation that we're still in the process of booking for 30 June 26 for the full roading and bridge valuation. It's just been finalised with our external independent valuer. And then any movement to the value of the roads at 30 June 26 will have a direct impact on what our depreciation costs will be for this financial year. So at the moment we're just tracking against budget. We may need to adjust that if there's a significant increase in the value. In terms of the financial position, there's no significant movements to report. The capital additions, there's that separate spread table below that outlines that we're sitting capex 871 against the full year project of 57 million. So we need to really catch up a little bit in our capex program. Cash balances are looking healthy, and we haven't had any need to change our debt position at the moment until that capex program really starts to kick off.
Thank you. I guess that's the for me the key takeaway of this is that we've got a Waitaki record $54 million of capex budgeted to be spent this year, and we're so far 900 deep into that pocket. Every month that we don't spend that capex it feels like it's making it even harder for us to spend the capex in the following month. So why are we not? And I guess Paul, Roger. Thank you.
So you can rest assured I have spent quite a bit of money in the last month. I've signed off quite a lot of expenditure, so I'm pretty optimistic that you won't have the same issue in the next report or the following one when the bills start coming in. my understanding of my limited financial understanding is that what you'd see in the report for being paid by the 31st of July would have had to have been ordered at the end of the last financial year. So we have now have a portfolio board for all the projects, which looks at all the projects and their progress and where they are in their status. And as I say, I can give you a level of confidence that this spending is going to start coming through now.
So will you be, with that board, that project board, will that be surfacing at council or at PAR, or where will councillors have a visibility of that?
So the portfolio board is at officer level, at manager level, to make sure that the projects are progressing in a timely fashion and within budget and within scope, and that the resources are allocated correctly across the organisation. The Assets and Infrastructure Committee receive a capital and initiatives expenditure report at each committee meeting, and that has a dashboard which shows where we've got to with that spending, and then that's received by council as the minutes of the Assets and Infrastructure Committee.
Okay, thank you. Graham, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So we've got, just clarification, excuse the question if others know the answer, as I'm a bit of a new boy here, but 1 month we spent 871. Is that cash based or accrual based? Because it's sounding from the answers Mr. Cook gave that there is a lot more been done out there and we haven't got the invoices in yet, which I may end up with a supplementary question after I get an answer on this one.
That's accruals based, so we, any invoices we have up until this report was completed last week were accrued back into the correct financial period. So if they related to July, work performed in July, then they were pulled back into July. And I think Mr. Cook is talking about like the contract tender sort of levels, so not necessarily coming through as invoices yet, so they're not anywhere near being booked in the system.
If I may, a supplementary.
Sure.
So do we operate a purchase order system where when something gets approved and sent out, we raise a purchase order and then we monitor the state of that purchase order to get accruals rather than waiting necessary for the invoices to arrive?
Yep, 100%. That is how we run our accruals. Yeah, we actually run 3 lots of accruals. So for the first 3 weeks of each week, for 3 weeks after month end, we go and pop into the purchase orders and run the accruals again, so that we're constantly keeping up with everything that's being booked in the system.
So based off the annual budget, if I may, as chair, of some 57 million, I would have expected that number to be sort of $4 to $5 million a month, like you alluded to. It just seems to be a bit strange that we're either not been doing anything, or we do have a hole in the systems about how we're capturing our potential expenditure.
As I said, there's some big projects that aren't in there yet, like the big one, for example, the $6 million event centre. I think there's a lot of waters, roading, things that are at the tender stage or contract stage. So until those documents result in any purchase order or invoice, they're not registered in our system. So if Roger's just signing contracts at this point, it's not captured in the financial system yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Brent, you had a question?
I do. On page 6, we've got a table there, and it says the 12-month budget for June 27 of 57,237, but that adds up to 44,980. There's 12 million missing somewhere in that row. And if we look at the 26th, there's 3 million somewhere missing out of that row as well. They're not adding up.
I will check the source document and send an accurate version via email.
Thank you. John?
Just a query more than anything. I'm just a wee bit concerned that we receive approximately $5 million worth of rates revenue, but our monthly spend, according to these figures here, is $8 million per month. So we're relying totally on grants and subsidies, donations, all the other bits and pieces to actually make that balance come close. If it doesn't, I estimate we're going to be down the tubes by 36 mil. Am I being alarmist at that, or is that just the way it sits?
That's our, like if you look at the second and third columns to the right, from the right-hand side, our our full year annual plan forecast and full year 27 budget completely relies on grants and donations. So 21 million of our 93 million is reliant on grants and donations. A big part of that is all of our roading funding. So there's about 10 million in there from NZTA for our roading maintenance contract. So it's all part of the picture. That's how we get down to the forecast. We're trying to get to break even. We need those grants and donations.
I suppose what I'm getting at through you, Mr. Chair, is personnel costs, finance costs and other expenses, they're almost higher than our income, and we're actually not doing anything to improve the district.
Yep. That's why the discussion as we go throughout the rest of the workshop today becomes so important, especially when we look at the potential stranded assets associated with any Southern Waters migration. All right, Sven, and then Dan.
On page 4, it's got the personnel costs expected to track in line with budget, which is good news in that sense. But the last year we budgeted 19.08 million. It ended up being 20.56 in an unplanned sense. The budget for this year was up to 20.43 million. So we're budgeting 7% higher than the previous year. And I don't know, we're not obviously privy to the terms of the annual pay increases or anything like that, but assuming it was a 4% inflationary increase, what's the other 3%, or whatever the true figure is, for?
So when we set the 27 annual plan, we didn't actually change personnel costs whatsoever. So the number, the original budget, stems from setting the long-term plan last year, and we, in the first year of the long-term plan, setting the 26 budget, we knew we'd just put out our new transformed organisation structure, so we knew exactly every single role that we were looking to fill and the sort of value that they were going to be. And then for the peaks and troughs of workload, there's a lot of reform happening over. We knew it was coming in 27. We know there's more to come in 28, 29. And so it's kind of directly related to ups and downs that we required in staffing levels to complete work. We knew that Waters transition was going to be a massive effort. It's taking a lot of staff time currently, and it will do right up until Southern Waters is set up on 1 July 27. So we knew it was going to require some extra staffing this year. In terms of the salary increase, that is set by Burrell, so the nationwide indices that all councils apply when preparing their long-term plan. So it's kind of, a bit of both, all sorts of factors like that. But the first starting point of our 26 long-term plan was that actual transformed org structure, and then just working out exactly what we needed for those later years.
Oh, that's a good answer. Thank you very much.
Dan?
Thank you. Through the chair, just given that we are 900k into a $57 million works program, is that set to be complete by the end of the financial year? I guess where I'm going with that is that maybe we don't need to panic so much because there will be a carryover on that.
Panic so much in what sense, Dan? Like
just in the sense that, excuse me, looking at it, we will be accruing that what we're expecting, because obviously procurement is going to take a while. Delivering of the actual infrastructure projects and things are going to take a period of time. if the total budget for that is the 57, what's the likelihood that all of that's going to fall within this financial year?
So from my involvement, like with the departments and the program board, from like the financial perspective, I understand that we have the finances in place in the 27 annual plan, and we have the resources in place to ensure that that project gets done this financial year. When we set the program in the 27 annual plan, we wanted to set one that was achievable and prioritise. We deferred what we could, like obviously around the finances, but we also took into account what we were like resourced to be able to achieve. A lot of it is driven by legislation and deadlines that we have, and that wanting to make sure everything's in line to pass over to Southern Waters on 1 July 27. And so also behind the scenes there is a spreadsheet we call the cash flow spreadsheet. I need to know well in advance what months that I need to borrow from LGFA. It's a bit of a process to draw down debt, and so people, when they have a specific project coming up, they've spaced that out over the 12 months and told me exactly what months I'm going to need to draw down debt. And so yeah, once we get a few more contracts signed up and that can be better populated, we'll have a better idea of exactly what month the budget is going to be utilised. But from my understanding, we have all intentions to complete the full program of work this financial year.
Okay, I mean, I think Roger had a point there as well, but I guess the reason driving these sorts of questions is that we've never spent this much money on CapEx in a year. It's in the history of the council. It's a significant driver of the 17% rate increase that we've gone out to our community and committed to. We're a month into the year already, and it looks like when you look at the finances, we're 80% underspend for the month. So, you know, there's a strong reason for why these questions are coming out. Roger?
A couple of points I'd like the committee to be aware of is that whilst we have a schedule in the program of work to get it achieved by the end of the year, we are starting to see already some very long lead times on some of the items for procurement, particularly ones that come from overseas. We're also getting some early warnings from some of the contractors of their availability to start work. So we've got at least one project out there which ideally should have been started by now, but the contractor has deferred the start time for a couple of months. And they are a contractor that would likely win other contracts as well. So there is that scenario that we are now having to manage as a project board. And we're also, through the project management office and the team, trying to find savings. So we're not spending the money just because we have the budget. So we are pushing for better prices and better deals. So we may not spend all the money, but we may deliver all the projects. But,
that would be a great result.
but 1 month in, it's hard to tell. But there's more to it than just spending the 57 million.
No, I get that, Roger, thank you. But I also have sat here for the past 6 months being told that, you know, the reason that we were having carryover into this financial year was because the project management office had been working hard to try and create things as efficiently as possible. And, you know, we've been told several times that things would be kicking off this year. You know, the carryover from last year should have been starting in the first month or two this year. So they're just a series of questions. They're certainly not an attack or a challenge on anybody, but, you know, it's a massive number, and it's a massive driver of why we went out to our community and said, you guys have got to pay 17% increase in rates. Sure, come back.
I'm not underestimating the task ahead.
Thank you very much. Did you have a supplementary, Dan?
Yes, I did. I was just going to say, and part of that was with regards to the phase 2 of the Network Waitaki Sports and Events Centre, the grandstand. There's $6 million effectively ring-fenced, but that's going to be carried over until the funding is in place before we actually move forward with it. So again, that's going to skew the figures somewhat, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's a prime example of the situation that we've got. A, the external funding needs to be secured. B, the spend happens, and then C, you'll see it all. The numbers come through here, and then there's so many other examples of that happening across the board and in the water space and things as well. So,
Thank you, Graham.
Through you, Chair, all my years working in the sector and the councils that I've been involved in, I haven't yet seen one that's actually managed to deliver their capital project number in a given year. Some councils actually, with best intentions at the beginning of the year, set up a project and then multiply it by 0.75 or 0.8 for the purposes of the budget, because there's so much stuff going on that's outside control of the council planners, such as Mr. Cook's referred to, delays coming in from contractors, supply issues, etc., etc. So certainly multiplying it by a factor is an approach some councils have used to get back and to something that realistically they'll probably end up delivering by the end of the year, as opposed to perhaps what they hope to do.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comment? See.
Yeah, just back to page 3, and it notes we're nearly
On time.
a deficit of almost 1 million versus budgeted surplus of 700k, and you've explained it's down to timing. Is it entirely timing for those grants, or is there anything else in there as well?
yeah, in terms of the grants and donations, it's entirely timing. Our roading spend happens, and then we subsequently do the application and get the funding back the following month. The grandstand is another big one. It's just fully dependent on when the expense happens. So you can see we're behind in the CapEx program, we're behind in other expenditure. So it makes sense that the compensating revenue hasn't come through yet either.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard a similar story last year with waiting for grants to come in to get the books balanced out, and didn't fully work out. Are we in a better situation this time in terms of the expenditure side of the equation, that won't happen unless the grants are in, or is the expenditure happening ahead of the grants anyway?
So the problem with this sort of funding, like the event centre, the funding comes in the P&L, but the expense is on the balance sheet. So our operating expenses aren't anything to do with grandstand. So we'll still have our normal operating costs, and if the grandstand doesn't go ahead, if we don't build it, there's no capital expenditure on the balance sheet, and if we don't get the revenue here, that's going to show us a $6 million deficit. So it just doesn't align perfectly because the expense is somewhere else.
Yeah, good, thank you. I thought it was worth exploring that, given we're planning a $1.3 million deficit, best case scenario.
Alrighty. And you didn't think we were going to need a half hour for this, Amanda? There we go. Hey, look, if there are no further questions, thank you for that. I'll ask somebody to move that we accept the financials. Moved by Sven, seconded by Dan. Was in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you, that's carried. We'll now move on to the second agenda item, which we've got a 30-minute slot for as well. And this is an update on the transformation program. So I'll hand over to Lisa and to...
Can I just jump
yes,
in there for a sec?
please do.
Just because I think there's a bit of a conflict having been part of that team in a previous life. So I'm actually going to step out of the conversation because I think it just keeps it cleaner and means that people can ask straight questions. So
Okay.
I'll be next door if someone wants to come in.
All right, thank you, Mel. Who'd like to lead off with this? Lisa.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Really stoked to be here today to talk about the Transformation Program Closeout Report to the PAR Committee. This project has recently been, this report has recently been done on the project that, I'll just have you note, did close at the end of last year. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that we haven't actually had the opportunity to share this information with our staff yet. Prior to coming with you and sharing it in a manner that's also quite public. So just wanted to acknowledge that. It's quite unusual because our staff have had a huge input into the program closeout report, as you'll see when Richard goes through it. Normally we'd get to them through our managers forums, through our all-staff meetings. We've made them aware that this is happening. But we did recognise the need to bring it first through to you in these workshops, particularly in the series of workshops that are looking into each of the functional areas, because it gives a good understanding of why those areas have been set up the way they have been set up going forward. Particularly, you know, the conversations around support services today will start to give you some insight into that. So we felt it was really important to help inform those discussions and to also speak to the maturity of where each of those areas are at in terms of the implementation of some of the new ways of working with transformation. And as we go through that, you'll see that that is broad and differing across our multiple areas. Alex would love to have been here today, so yes, apologies for him not being here. This is very dear to his heart, but he was unable to be here today. And I also want to acknowledge the rather extensive amount of reading material that's been put into the system. So I wanted to introduce the structure of that to you today. I don't expect you all to have read it in depth before now. The purpose of today really is about talking about the Transformation Program Closeout Report, noting that it closed at the end of last year. After I've given you this introduction, Richard Marr, Performance and Continuous Improvement Manager, will talk through a short presentation on the closeout process and the findings. And in terms of those supporting documents, extensive as they are, there's two main pieces there. So attachment 3, which I'll start with first, starting on page 62 of your agenda, it's actually the closeout report draft. So it's the more academic piece of work, demonstrates the great process that's been worked through to carry out to close the project. Whereas attachment 2, starting on page 21 of your agenda, is basically another way of presenting the attachment 3 data. It was never intended to be a presentation or a full report, and it's to stand on its own. It was about creating some graphics to visually show in multiple ways the information that has been achieved through the transformation program, and also for the benefit of those people that haven't been involved throughout the full program to actually speak to the journey. So it covers off a really complex project and findings. Covers off the case for transformation, the transformation journey, the value we've created, and continuing on the journey being the opportunities that still remain. So the visual summary is broken up. It was intended to be broken up and used in different ways to communicate to different audiences. So when you're looking at it, just keep that in mind. It's not a full-flowing document. We were conscious that this program's been going since 2023, and many won't have been fully aware of even the reason why we chose to transform in the first place. I suggest that if we can, we leave questions until the end of the piece that Rich is going to take us through. It's been a really massive project, and we've only got 30 minutes to spend with you on it today, remembering that the purpose is to focus on the program closeout. You'll have a huge amount of questions, I'm sure, and I suggest that this is actually not the last time we're in front of you talking to you about the program, and about what it's delivered and about what our opportunities still are. And it will importantly help frame the discussions that we're having throughout this series of PAR workshops. So before Richard goes into the program closeout report, I just wanted to provide a brief history for the benefit of the members of the public who will be watching this workshop when it becomes available. So in 2022, Council found itself at a really important crossroads in local government, where we were forced with the decision of either redesigning ourselves to be able to do more with the same or potentially fewer resources, without a reduction in service levels or service delivery, or risk becoming almost irrelevant in the changing reform landscape. And boy, that's moved even a long way further than we dreamed it would in 22. If we failed to change, we'd no longer be able to meet the increasing needs of our stakeholders. We recognised that we needed to reshape how we worked, what we did, who did what, how we did it, remodelling services and strengthening our service delivery. And then our financial landscape also changed further, meaning that removing duplication and increasing efficiencies and effectiveness was more important than ever. We wanted to make council stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to meet the needs of our community then and into the future. And we recognised that much reform and change was ahead of us, And it was vital to us that we built an operating model, a way of working, a structure of the organisation that was scalable, so that we could ensure that we moved with the changes that would come in time, and we're certainly seeing those changes ahead of us now in the form of transition to water services and the simplifying local government amalgamation processes that are taking place now. So whilst this was a whole of council program, it focused heavily on a few key and very significant changes. So they were a new operating model and the resulting organisational design or structure. A locality model, which I hope we get to talk a whole lot more about with you, which is focused on place-based working and how we do things. A new approach to customer and customer service and case management. A project management office, which we've already discussed briefly. Using our technology and digital enablement and better reporting to be able to be more accountable, to allow the community and you to hold us accountable for what we state we're going to achieve. Performance and continuous improvement function, and a whole lot of work with a key focus on our people, our capability and our culture. We've made really great progress in each of these areas. We knew we wouldn't get it all done or get it 100% right in this process too, but we wanted to create a culture of performance, measurement, outcome tracking, so that we can be far more evidence-based, data-driven in our drive for continuous improvement. We wanted to genuinely become a leading, innovative council delivering the best for our communities. We've gathered much attention from other councils too, with several talking to us along the way about what we're embarking on, and some seeking further advice and guidance even now on their own transformation journeys that they have commenced, albeit a very challenging time to be commencing this sort of program. So that was just a bit of a snapshot as to the 3-year program that we've been through. And of course today is focusing on the closeout of that program project. So I will hand to Richard.
Thank you. Look, just before you start, Richard, I appreciate that we want to hold the questions off till the end, but I do want to leave enough time for at least 10, 15 minutes worth of questions. So I'm going to cap you out at past.
Good luck.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're cooking. So I just want to draw on a small point that Lisa raised, and that is over the last 2 years or 3 years, lots of people have talked to us about their transformation, and their transformation is often we're putting in a new system, you know, a piece of software or something. It's actually quite narrow in its scope. Or they're thinking what they're really doing is cutting what they deliver. So they're actually cutting what they deliver to reduce cost. Whereas we've not set out to do that. We've set out to do more with the same, or possibly even less. So it's quite different. So while we recognise the need to change, we actually took it a step further than that. We took it to find efficiencies that were endurable and lasting. So what did council look like before we changed? It's really important not to lose sight of this. So we worked in silos. We had departments that would follow each other, and one person would potentially undo something someone else had done. It was very difficult to coordinate what we were doing. Customers needed to know who to speak to. So if you needed something done, you'd have to ring council and ideally know who was the right person to talk to. And if you happen to know the right person, you had that relationship, things flowed pretty good. But if you didn't know, it didn't flow well. And I think it's easy to lose sight of things like that. We weren't as visible locally. Now we have locality officers. So we have a number of roles actually who are quite visible in the communities, some of which have been amazing during some of our recent civil defence activities. While we still have paper and workarounds, we have a lot less of this. We have better ability to see our demand and plan better. We had growing pressure, which we've all just been talking about, and still working to get our heads around in capital delivery and service delivery in lots of aspects. And I think behind the scenes there was this, I'll call it a culture of inefficiency, a growing inefficiency where the solution to our problems was often finding an additional resource to throw at it. It's a bit of a phenomenon. So The key shifts, we brought our teams together to serve the community better, working as one team. The customer is at the centre of our customer service. I know we've had lots of conversations in the past about constituents and ratepayers and things like that, but we need to serve everybody, and they're at the centre of what we do. Our places and localities are at the centre of how we deliver services. We think about our places, and that's really relevant, and probably even more relevant going into amalgamations in the future. We made council easier to access, and we opened up. We got things on weekends, things we haven't done before. So we've done lots of new things. And probably one of the more challenging things and an enduring piece of work is we are changing our culture, and we are working differently, because we can't keep just bolting on resources. We have to think about our problems and tackle them effectively. So the benefits in some simple terms. So in the document, there's quite a piece on this, but some of the headline ones. So our FTE, there's some charts in the document that talk about our trajectory, and our FTE was quickly spiralling up and up and up year after year, and we've effectively contained that. We've contained that through a combination of discipline in how we work and what we do, but also in that change of culture that we're trying to work differently. People have fewer runarounds. We can see evidence that telephone calls aren't simply just passed through the CLO. The team downstairs who answer the phones and do that are excelling at getting better and better every day. We've got statistics on the figures where we resolve something at first contact. It's not where we want it to be, but it's going the right way, because every phone call we resolve up front satisfies the customer sooner and reduces our back office expenses. It's about big efficiency movements. Requests don't get lost. You'll see in the statistics that we have got a thing we call CRMs now. We've got much more CRMs. However, that's actually a good thing, because it means if someone couldn't resolve that when they first made contact, it's not going to get lost. You won't get the runaround. Our case team tackle that. Our services are closer to home, as I alluded to before. We've got roles who focus on parts of the district, and not just one, we've got several roles that are visibly present and doing excellent work. But I think, just to go back to that first point, it's about making council stronger and better, because by focusing on getting things right and good business sense, we save money, and that is strongly aligned to central government's agenda. So, we set out to do this closeout, and we needed to follow a very rigorous process. We wanted to know, of all the things we set out to do, what has changed, how well is it embedded, and what gaps or opportunities remain. So, in more or less 3 steps: assess the delivery, so did we do what we said we'd do? Assess the adoption, how well has it been taken up by people? And then figure out what's left to do next. So the process was fairly broad. We had some structured interviews where a team of people went out and interviewed a number of staff, which I'll get to shortly. We had a survey which enabled anonymity in the process. We also had lots of data and facts we could go looking for, and other aspects of the program that we could look to figure out if we'd done what we were supposed to do. So we covered a very large proportion of our workforce in gathering the data. There was a timekeeping exercise, and I'll labour this point just a little bit. So the timekeeping exercise, we asked, I think it was about 70 or so people, to track what they do for a week. Now, a week is not a really long time, but it is a window, and it does let you get some really good evidence about what people spend their time on during that week. Okay, it was recorded at the 10-minute interval, so I wasn't very popular with people. But that said, it's still very useful data. And what's even more useful is we'd conducted a similar study a little bit earlier. And so while not exactly the same, we could do some points of comparison to see how we'd moved the dial. So we had about 70 people go in that process. We gathered an awful lot of information, and that enabled us to do some of the statistics we've got here today. because we didn't have good data on this sort of stuff. This is one of the huge changes. We never used to do this as an organisation, but now we do. In the interview process, we had some of our staff go around interviewing people, so we had different people doing different interviews, so we tried to eliminate bias, and we tried to eliminate, the same people doing the same thing, so we tried to spread it out as much as we could. And the survey, we spread that out across the organisation as widely as we could too, and the responses were generally quite high. We had quite a high proportion of people respond to us. And the bottom line for all of this activity is, again, we wanted to know, of all the things we needed to do, was it not delivered, partially delivered, delivered and embedded was the ultimate goal. So we did a lot of research into this. There's a lot of data floating around, and in the recommendations and other parts of the report, there's all sorts of useful things that you can read and analyse to see where we're at as an organisation. And I think I've tried to summarise the 5 things that we need to do here as an organisation. So post-transformation, this closeout report, make it consistent. We've got areas of the organisation who are in common ways of working, but the way they do it isn't necessarily the same. There's little blips. There's inconsistencies of handovers and that between when work leaves one part of the organisation and another. So there's room to get things better. The customer experience, we need to ideally revisit this and make improvements on this. We've made great inroads, but we're not there yet. We still need to do a bit more. And if we move the needle, if we can get, say, our resolved at first contact from, I think it's about 50% at the moment, to 70%, that's 20% of those interactions not going through to the back office. That matters. It really matters. Modernising our systems. This is a big challenge for every local government. It's really difficult. We've got lots of systems, as you would have heard from Scott, and uplifting them to a point where they meet our needs is very challenging, and we've still got some more work to do there. Strengthening local delivery. We've done some great pieces there. We've got some real points of differentiation compared to other councils. And as I alluded to before, looking ahead into the future, having people on the ground in potentially a much larger council is really important. However, there's still room to make improvements there as well, and some of that's in how we're working with each other. And probably the last thing I'd point out here is, I think one of the key differences that we need to have is we need to be able to, measure and track what we're doing. People need to be accountable for what we promise, and we should be able to track that through and keep an eye on it. It's so easy to get distracted. There's so many things happening. There's all these reforms. There's so much going on, but these fundamental changes to how we work is really very important. Very important. And losing sight of why we did them in the first place is a real danger. It could be so easy for us to introduce a change and then basically say, I can see the clock ticking, and then basically say, we need to do it differently or something. But that's a failure. We need to look at the root cause of these things and understand what's going on, and then build on that through a cycle of improvement. So we've got this last slide here, which I won't go through. It's really just a bit of an exec summary, a bit of a snapshot, and I'll leave it on screen just while we go into questions, because it's really quite useful to sort of reflect on what's been changed, what are the benefits, and where we should be going or potentially going as an organisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Richard. I've just had a nod here from Deputy Chair Sven, who's got 3 questions.
They're all related to each other. The first one, first to just observe though that there's been a lot of success here. Like, it's nice to be able to do a lot of the council business online without having to physically go into a centre, and it's certainly there's been a lot of efficiencies, and it's evident from having recently got onto council and seeing it firsthand. So the areas I'd like to test, the first one, the original 2022 approval of the transformation program was for $4.5 million over 3 years, plus or minus 25% variance. Was it delivered within that?
At the closeout last year in December, we were running under budget. I can't remember the exact figures, but of the 4.3 or 5 or whatever it was, yeah, we were under budget.
Yeah, that's excellent. And there was a 17% return on investment was what was indicated would pay that back. And it's not specifically in this report, which would be nice to see a budget, like a project budget, how that money was spent and how that return is made up. And then what is in there is the 1.65 million of savings of projected what would have been an FTE growth.
Hang on, what could have been?
What could have been.
Right, not what would have been, what could have been.
So I guess to try and, when I was reading it, I was trying to calculate the ROI myself, and that would be 36% if that 17 roles stacks up. What were those 17 roles? Was it based off a workforce forecast at the time, or is it just based on the general trends of the whole local government sector?
No, they're based off of our data. So we went into transformation with well over 200 FTEs. I can't remember the exact number. It might have been 220, something like that. So it was high. And then we reduced back to 196-ish. It's a bit of time's got by. And now we're slightly above that, maybe 200, I think, but aiming to go down. So we reduced back, and then we've extrapolated forward as well to basically account for if we had done nothing. So it's like a counterfactual assessment. So that's what it's based off. It's based off who we were, what we went back to, and the fact that we've sustained that.
So if I look at page 95 of this report, that doesn't align, those 9 numbers don't align with anything that you've just told me. It says that we peaked at 200 FTE in 23-24. It also tells me that between 2021 and 2023, before the transformation project began, we had a 6% reduction in FTE. So I'm just going off page 95, which is what you've presented today. Page 95 of the pack, page 96, sorry, of the pack. Because this is the critical number in terms of the save, right? That's the page where you've got your projected.
No, so if you're looking at the blue line, that is the trend that we're following.
No, sorry, let me interrupt. I'm looking
dark
at the blue bar chart.
Mm-hmm.
You just said that we've gone from 220 FTE down to 190. That blue bar chart caps out at pretty much 200 in 23-24.
Yeah, it was definitely over 200 FTE. I remember that.
220. Please don't shake your head, because these
I
numbers
don't
are
know.
absolutely critical. To Sven's point, you either get an ROI of 36% or you get an ROI of nothing.
No. So there was over 200 FTE. I don't have an exact figure right in front of me, but we can do that. And the trend we're looking at is the fact that we've stopped that in 24, 25, 25, 26 and 26, 27. That's what we're trying to come at here, is the fact that we've contained that.
Okay.
If I may just add to that, when we first did this case for change, we talked about this program and the ROI in particular being done over a 6-year period, with 2022 being year 0 and then through the next 5 years. So we talked about looking at the return on investment modelling through to the end of that 5 years. So we will still be calculating that and calculating those benefits, and we'll certainly, quantify exactly what that figure should be. 221 is very clearly what I've had in my head, but we'll make sure that we bring that correctly into the modelling and to you.
Thank you. I guess it also adds to Sven's point about it would be great to see a budget breakdown and return at the kind of next iteration of this as well. You had another question, then we're going to go to Dan, then we're going to go to Rebecca,
Yeah, just
then we're going to go to Brent.
a request to finish off, if we could get more examples of the types of roles we've avoided, or part roles or things like that, just to really demonstrate it beyond just the general trend, and that would justify it nicely, give us the confidence that return's been achieved. It does. The trend certainly indicates it. Yeah, but detail would be great.
Thanks, Simon. I've got a couple of easy ones for you. What's worked and what hasn't? And does anything need to be rolled back, given we're looking at amalgamation? Because it was easier potentially from siloed departments and situations when you're looking at actually aligning with other entities.
Yeah, what's worked and what hasn't, there's a bit of a list in my mind at the moment. So the customer and case model has worked really quite well, but there's room to improve. Some of the figures I was referring to before about like the number of calls addressed at first point of contact and so on, it's good, but we can go further. The comms has been really phenomenal. Those guys do great engagements. They've had so much uplift in their engagement on many dimensions, and their approach is really good. They can tackle micro and macro sort of engagements, and that's really good. The locality model has been really successful. There's challenges in making sure we're getting the right work to them and making sure that it's at the right amount so they can get through it. But you know, even I remember sitting in the civil defence exercise, and I was just so happy there was someone on the ground, you know, in Wahimo, for example. A lot of the changes we've made with the governance team, with you guys, how we get papers to you, all this sort of work that we do now, that's all radically different to how it used to be. Again, it's really easy to lose sight of all of that. Even just how teams, and it isn't always perfect, come together to solve problems, that's very different as well. We've got some, I guess, some areas where multiple teams come together now to solve problems, and that can have teething problems, but generally it's a big change in how we do things. We've changed oodles of our systems. Again, the IT side of things, we've got a huge legacy. There's 20, 30 odd different businesses here with all sorts of different systems of all different ages. It's a big job keeping them all on cutting edge, but we've made great inroads there. Yeah, I'm kind of running into walls here, but there's all sorts of things that we've done, and it's been really good. And to address your question, I think some of the models we've got are actually even more relevant in a broader geographical context than they are today, working in localities, because I don't think you want to lose sight of localism and places in the future, assuming the central government reforms go the way they seem to be going. So there might be some areas where we scale back perhaps, or set up differently for the future, but I certainly wouldn't roll anything back.
Do you mind if I just quickly add
Sure.
to that? Yeah, one of the, there's a lot of conversations happening with the transition for waters, and they're very interested in our locality model and our case management model at this stage. And, there's an opportunity there for my customer experience manager going, well, this is something we're doing really well now. Do we have a role to play, particularly in the establishment of Southern Waters, where we can do that for them as well? So there's opportunities there for scaling in either direction.
Thank you.
Rebecca.
Thank you, and I guess just wanted to start echoing Councillor Founding's points. Like, it is good for us to be really celebrating the really positive results from transformation in terms of working together, reducing duplication, digital services, locality model. And I guess I just wanted to pick up on, the point that this is, I guess, in a PAR workshop, not all of us are here, the acknowledgement that this isn't there's more to be done here, because what keeps coming back to me is people are really wanting, because of the significant investment that we've made in transformation, I continue to get questions over, what's actually meant, like a lot of the questions that have been asked. And when Alex touched on it in his last CE's report, he sort of said, I was hoping that this was kind of be that opportunity to really be able to clearly tell that story, both for us to be able to communicate that and for our community to understand. And like, this is a big document, it's a lot of words, and I'm not sure that I could kind of confidently from this do that. So question one probably is, or maybe a request perhaps, that this does come back to a full council meeting. So then we do also have the opportunity for Alex to be here to be able to touch on that too. But that we can really, have this in a really condensed, structured, clear document for us to be able to communicate with the community and for them to be able to understand as well. So that's really not a question. My two questions are, with, the ongoing work for modernising our systems, with what's ahead with amalgamation through Head Start or otherwise, like changes coming, and I was just wondering what this looks like, so we're not investing in technology that's not going to align with future partners. And the other question I had was, is it possible for us to actually see the staff survey results, like the questions that were asked and the responses, like the narratives, helpful, but I would be quite interested in some of that feedback. Actually, I have another question, but I'll leave it.
Maybe just to answer a few of those, really keen on, once we've had it through staff, to be able to create that almost comms plan to get this out to the community. Sometime in the past we talked about what the community would see as a result of our transformed council. Now is the chance to go, how did we do on that? So we will work on that very brief document. As I said, this information today wasn't intended to be that, to be able to share with the community. We'll talk to Alex about bringing it through to a council meeting. In terms of the staff survey data, I would probably just want to take a look over it again, just to see what intent we used when we asked for it, to see how widely it would be shared. I think that covers most of them. Have I missed anything?
No. My other question, well, I guess on the staff feedback, was sort of whether there was anything that you were particularly concerned about. But the other thing, I guess, with things sort of still being tidied up and results to be realised and things to be completed, was what governance oversight will we kind of have from here, apart from hopefully like a formal, more full council document in terms of continuing to follow as things are realised. Yeah,
I think the conversations around that return on investment will continue, as we get through into that 6-year period. I will heads up that there is still work to do on our culture. We've got quite a fatigued organisational change. We started working on change before orders, before everything else around us happened. So there are areas that some staff think are working well and others don't. So we've got a bit of work to do on our culture, and that's, I would expect, through a program like this, and we'll continue to do that. But through the reporting that comes through in terms of holding us as a more accountable organisation, you should get that oversight. We'll continue that ROI, and we will come through to a council meeting as well.
I am super conscious of time and the amount of other stuff that we've got to get through, but I've got a quick question from Brent. I've got a comment from Roger. I've got a question from Graham, and I've got a question from Franz, and that's all got to happen within 4 minutes.
I'll try and be quick, but mine is very similar along the lines of, and I've written this down because when I went through this paper yesterday, it is very large and there's a lot of information in there. And I understand that the program is one of the larger pieces of work the council's undertaken, so some of the extent of the reporting is going to match that. And this is not the only document that I'm commenting on, to be fair. In July last year, we adopted a communications and engagement strategy. We wrote it ourselves. It says we'll use plain language, and I'm quoting, no jargon, no waffle. One of its objectives is titled Less is More, and it names the problems as information overload. It commits us to a plain language policy, easy read versions, and our key documents. And it was a 1-year priority which finished last month. One of the key things for me is that the strategy also applies to everybody, and that's all interactions that our elected members and staff with members have, and the public with one another. So it shouldn't be different what comes to us internally and what goes to the public, because for me, I'm just a member of the public, trying to take on a whole lot of information that isn't my everyday work. So what I've looked at here, and I'll try and abbreviate this, there's 141 pages on transformation. I understand now why there's different lenses on that for different audiences, but we don't have a lot of different audiences really. If we look at that comms strategy, it's for us and the public. And we've got $1 figure that quantifies a benefit based on perceived savings. There's no figure at all for what the program costs. There's no profit or loss. There's no benefits register. And so there's a lot of paper here, but the stuff that really matters, and I'll skip down to the end, what I'd like to see is not more pages. I'd like to see fewer with the numbers in them. What it costs, what we got back, showing a simple profit and loss on the first page, source, so anyone can check it. The data in this report is deep and detailed, and it is very impressive, and I don't want to take away from the amount of work that was done and the wins that we've had, but the key measurement of the bottom line dollars matter, and knowing how data and numbers relate to spend or savings, or how the efficiencies delivered savings, to me that really matters. And I know with the scrutiny that we've had, I feel that's what the public's going to be looking for as well. So I don't know how others feel.
Right, so I'm going to call that a statement that these guys can take on board when we look about how we present it going through to the next round. But thank you, it was well thought and well articulated. Graham.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Look, you mentioned at the beginning that you did a lot of internal surveys and made them widespread to avoid bias. But at the end of the day, what's the perception of our ratepayers as to whether service levels have improved, whether we've actually achieved, because we're spending their money. And so I think we need to think about how suppliers, our users, our ratepayers are reacting to this, and look into that, because the message sent in the previous speaker, I won't go there, but less is more. We need to be able to quantify it, but at the end of the day, what's their perceptions? Has this project improved their experience?
Thank you. Again, useful feedback to take on board. Roger, is your comment still?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a comment in relation to Deputy Mayor Ryan's question and comment around Head Start. And as the Chief Executive is not able to be here, I channel his view on this. You have to remember that Head Start may or may not happen. There's a lot of what if thinking going through the exec team as we make decisions. But we have to be careful as an organisation that we don't use Head Start as a reason not to do anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that when we go through some of the departmental discussions later on, that'll kind of come through as well. But we can't wait for something that might happen when there's stuff we can do now that should happen and could happen. Franz, it's going to be the last one, I'm sorry. But as you said, Lisa, this won't be the first time this comes here.
First of all, echo what Brent says, guys. I've said it a couple of meetings ago. The length of a document does not indicate quality. And that is a culture that I still think needs to be addressed, period. As far as working in silos, I'm sure that this work has improved that. But I can tell you from my own experience and conversations I had with colleague councillors, it has not finished yet. That needs further work. And I just wonder, and that is just a question in my own mind, how much of our staff, our officers working in this rabbit hole of a building with 3 or 4 different levels and other people over there in Way Street, how that actually affects working in silos. I think that's possibly a contributed factor to this. Finally, and that goes also towards what just been said, is that, by Graham, is that I am a new councillor here, and before coming onto council, I basically got all my information around transformation, from social media and the negativity surrounding that. And I'll be honest that if it hadn't been for what you showed us this morning, Richard, I would have taken a lot of what I've seen today with a massive grain of salt. But having seen that now in action, that I will be able to get back to my people in my ward or whoever approach me in question, I can now finally demonstrate what is a result from transformation. So, and I think that's really important, and I encourage everybody, the link Brent has sent through this morning, go and have a look at it, because it'll be able now to answer so many questions that we get as councillors from our people that we represent to do that. So, yeah, that's my comments.
All right, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up there. I think there's a lot of stuff for us all to take on board and a lot of us to digest, and I'll definitely be working with you guys going forward to try and help bring things back to this forum and the council in a useful shape. But thank you. And we will leap now. I've also been reminded that these are workshops and not meetings, and so I don't have to ask for supporters and seconders. So we'll just forget all those ones that I did before. We've got Scott. I think you're up next. No, sorry, it's Paul.
Thank you. So the purpose of this workshop, so we are on page 152, is sort of the first response to the resolution that the PAR passed to start a more detailed review, particularly a cost-focused review, but also a service review of the various council activities. So what we've worked on is a template. So this is the first attempt at working through that template. If it doesn't quite answer the questions or meet your needs, it can be adjusted as we...
The mayor's at our back again, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She knows it all. Just tweak the template to make sure that you're getting value from these sessions as you work through a lot of the other activities. This one is focused on the support services directory, which I think all, I was going to say 6, 7 of us, are still missing one person, are pretty passionate about, as I think all council officers are. Look, we're really up to the challenge of having these discussions about what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and how much it costs. So really answering those W questions that come up most often. And yeah, really wanting to develop that understanding and good understanding of the costs. I think as you work through all of this, I was trying to think, how do you describe what council is? Because it can be pretty difficult. And really, other than water and roads, or the 3 waters and roads, what it is a collection of an awful lot of relatively small but complex businesses. Business, John will be upset about using the term business when you don't make money, but so these are operational activities. So even in support services, where we've got them grouped into 6 functions, you could break down something like finance, because that's the one I know the most about. It's like, actually, well, we've got a small accounting practice that supports all the other businesses. We need to produce Tier 1 annual reports. We need to do an LTP, and we've also got a rating function that sort of generates however many millions dollars worth of rates every year. So even you say, finance services, it's pretty straightforward, but there's detail within that. I think the other area where that's really reflected is in what Scott will talk about, that so many of the businesses and activities actually need something specialised in terms of digital services, even though it might only be a couple of people using them. So that's why you see, as Scott said, we've got you almost be asking, why have we got as many applications and systems as we have people? And that's really because once you, especially as you work through some of the other activities, really will see that sometimes one person might be doing quite 2 distinct things and need a different level of support for each of those functions. So that's sort of the general introduction. Support services, there's almost no external revenue coming into these functions. I'm not counting the treasury function. That's a whole of council thing that just finance happens to manage, but it's not finance revenue that's offset against the finance function. We are a big part of the dreaded overheads that you will see in a bunch of activities. And that's really just so that the costs we incur are funded in an appropriate way according to the revenue and financing policy. So when, as part of the LTP, we start talking about revenue and financing, we might actually have a talk about, is it still appropriate to fully fund all of these activity as an overhead, and maybe some of them should be directly funded by the ratepayer. Again, going back to finance, producing the annual report, having the audit fee, doing all of that, it really is quite a public-facing and regulatory requirement. It's not really servicing any of the other departments of council. Maybe a better way to fund that is say, actually, that's a cost of being a councillor, and it just goes straight into the rates requirement, rather than sort of doing a couple of loops around the organisation and collecting a bit of cost along the way. So that's the kind of things that I think we will work through. You know, this is the first, get it under year, then we can have a think about, well, maybe there's a better way of doing it. We can challenge the costs and really come up with something that's a bit more transparent in many of the cases. So you'll see in most of the comments, it's like each of these activities will be right-sized again, sort of once you've moved through the complete cycle of all of the others, made some decisions, say, well, what do we need to now support those functions? Some will be, there's a bit of elasticity in them, but others not so much. I did a quick count up before. When I arrived 20 plus years ago into council, there were 9 people in the finance team. At the moment, there are 10. So that's something where probably the growth is actually in demand has been offset by better use of systems, better automation, better creditors and payment systems, all of those things. So it's like, you know, so for 20 years it's moved by one person, and that was one person going into the rates team to actually provide a better level of customer service. So, you know, so conscious to some others, again, sorry to pick on Scott, are significantly larger than they were 20 years ago. But
we only had 2 computers.
Correct. And memos were written by hand, and you put them in an envelope and wrote the person's name on it and ran around the organisation. Yeah, that's how old I am and how long I've been here. So that's enough reminiscing from me. I would ask that you be nice to Mark. As you can see, he's come in here on crutches, especially just to see you, and especially nice to Ashwin, who's hiding in the back there, as he is
3 weeks deep.
Like 2.5. So he's just gone from days into weeks in terms of how you count. So please be nice to him, but he's really hit the ground running, and I'm sure we'll be up for the challenge of answering your questions. So with that, over to you, Scott.
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate the comment that you made before, Paul, that you know, we only have 15 minutes or so for each department here today, and so the objective of this is not for us to solve everything here and now. It's for us to get a much better understanding about current state, and then go away and have a think about, you know, what potential future state might involve. It's interesting to note before we get onto Scott's budget that I look at my colleague's Waitaki laptop here, and he's missing the the T key.
That's my personal laptop.
Oh, that's your personal one. Yeah. Scott, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So how much time do you want for questions in each one?
Oh, look, I think if we can rattle it through, and for the 15 minutes, if we can rattle them through in about 10 and have 5 for questions, that would be a really good start. Like I said, we're not going to boil the ocean here today.
So I'll give a quick introduction to what we do here, and then I will take sort of the rest as read and leave that open for the questions. But I'll try and put it in the plain language as we talked about just before. So digital services at the council, we provide the technology systems and information council relies on to deliver the strategic goals and serve the community. We enable all the other business units, and we are the reason that things stay secure, keep working, and we've been working through making things easier and more fluid. To put it in context, services like going for a swim at the pool may not seem like they've got a digital component, but underneath it all we manage the controllers that keep the water and the air right, the till at reception, network that keeps it all operating, the FPOS and the phone system that they use to operate. If you look at building consent, I think it's just the building team, passes through consenting software. We then integrate all those property files together to deliver that service and hold a database to contain all that and then also manage the payment provider. Requesting a service to council, we've got online forms, Anteno, phone systems, customer requests, and the customer management system that all flows through and automatically gets to the right teams. Even replacing a pipe in the ground, we've got asset management systems, GIS maps, hydraulic modelling, design software, workforce scheduling and billing are all digital systems that empower those services. So we look after all of those, the networks, devices, the cybersecurity, all the connections and everything that links this together. Alongside this, we also provide the day-to-day support for council staff and the contractors. So as part of that, we have quite a portfolio. We've got developers, we have system engineers that look after this. We also have support desk, and we also look after the wonderful finance team, hence why we've picked up some of their lack of growth. So I'll open that up to questions.
Thanks, Scott. Look, sorry, you go for it, Mel.
Sorry. In an amalgamation kind of space, or with that view onto things, when it comes to us investing in or looking at different programs, is that a lens you guys are using at the moment as to whether or not you do invest further, recognising that we could be looking, and it might be it could be a good few years down the track, we don't know, as to what that could look like when we join with other councils? I just guess that we need to kind of understand where the thinking's at there a little bit.
So we thought about the amalgamation and how that could impact digital services. Part of the things that we've been doing over the last 3 years have been trying to get our systems and our practices to best practice, utilising modern approaches to doing things and making sure we can scale. After the amalgamation talks started coming out, we then have started to look at our neighbouring councils and making sure our systems are aligned, or trying to align them and making sure we have those talks underway to sort of work better and work in a more cohesive way. Even if we have the same systems, it isn't necessary that we use them the same ways. So we're working through figuring out how we can actually start to align those processes underlying those systems as well.
Just through the chair, if I may, do you see, when it comes to things like the costs of different services and that we're obviously paying and licensing and that, do you think that joining together with others is going to see those costs go down, or do you think that that actually won't be relevant to the way the service providers operate? Yeah.
I think it's been a dramatic shift for service providers as well. They're going from a huge number of councils down to a projected quite small number. That makes the market an interesting space. We've seen in the building consenting area where the competition all got brought out. So there's very little play in that and probably quite a strong monopoly. That definitely didn't do us favours, and I suspect that'll potentially happen in other areas as well. Where we don't have a lot of power is probably the ones like Microsoft. DIA does our negotiation with that. It generally works on about 10% per year, they just increase. At the moment, we seem to be seeing other vendors that we have a bit more flexible in the agreements, and we've managed to get most of them down to around the 4 to 6% increase.
Look, Scott, sorry.
Sorry, I just wonder whether, and you may not be totally across the detail on this, whether or not things like the systems improvement bill that's happening at national level has any kind of indication on nationalising of any service or things in behind the scenes. So how much are you guys aware of what's sort of going on in that space?
So I've seen, we used to have all the government agreements for things like ERPs, or the Civica Authority that we use. They seem to have not had the attention from central government in the recent times, so we haven't seen much benefit from that. I haven't seen any drastic change in anything that has been released as of yet. But hopefully there'll be some unified way that we can actually acquire and purchase software.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Because if I look at the pie chart on page whatever it is of your report, you are one of the few pie charts that are coming here today where you've got something that's greater than overheads, and it's like software costs are massive. And if we look at where they've gone from, say, I think in 24 they were something like 1.2 million a year, and in 27 they're projected to be 2.5 million a year. Is that what proportion of that would you say is the Microsoft sort of 10% cumulative, and what, to Mel's point, what new, have we got heaps of new software as well, or are these primarily just, actually, it's a new year and you've got a new charge?
So about a year ago, we consolidated software licensing across the council. So we used to have departments running their own software, and we had a bit of shadow IT there. So part of our efforts to try and consolidate that and bring those prices down, we brought that all under digital services. So there will have been a large increase while we did that exercise. Majority of our costs with software licensing come from Civic Authority, so our main ERP, which runs most of our software, or most of our processes, and the other one would be Microsoft. Those will maintain those costs. We haven't got a huge amount of extra software, and we're working through consolidating them.
So it's just your ratchet?
Yeah.
Which is a bit ratchet. I'm going to go on to Graham online because he's got a question, and then we'll move around to Graham.
Thank you. Look, me and Mel's pulled out most of the comments I was going to make. Thank you. But I think we possibly have to go through this exercise again in the not too distant future once we've got certainty as to which way the amalgamation cookie's going to crumble. And start looking well ahead of the amalgamation dates about where we can rationalise and have set up local authority service arrangements, effectively multi-council, that's going to help us on the journey to the amalgamation process. And hopefully down that process we will see some cost savings. But firstly, it's identifying what are the common areas, what can we be doing, and starting thinking as a group of X number of councils with whatever the cookie crumbles on us to be, and look to try and drive some efficiencies out of the system ahead of any amalgamations. But it'll be useful to know down the track what it is, what everyone's systems are, where the possibilities. So I see this whole process, so I don't raise it at every option, there to keep looking for how can we do this better, how can we get ourselves to the end destination perhaps a little sooner and reap some benefits rather than carrying on and working in our own style and doing our own this, that and the other. Can we share rating? Can we share payroll? Can we share GLs? Can we share infrastructure, IT support, and having a plan across all the constituent people about how we get to the right answer as soon as possible?
Yeah.
So that was sort of more a general comment.
Thank you. Yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to be committing a whole lot of cash to upgrading a system that you were going to be the only horse in town that had it. I'm going to hand to Sven, and then I'm going to go to John, and then Franz. And then
I recall a few months back we received a document that sort of listed all the applications and what they were, and I went through them, and it was they all looked pretty well justified to me, like in terms of you need them, and it was that those big all of government ones that were sort of locked to. So I got two questions around those big ones. One is there like a cross-council feedback to government about the pressure that particular deal is putting on? Because I know that governments in other countries are actually designing their own systems. I don't know how well that works or not, but but it does solve a data sovereignty issue as well as the cost issue. So yeah, is there any discussion in IT circles around that?
So we have regular catch-ups with our vendor that helps with the Microsoft licensing. Microsoft negotiates directly with DIA, and we get passed that on as an all-of-government agreement. So we sort of get dished out whatever they come up with as a collective. Just 2 weeks ago, I gave feedback around the Copilot licensing back to them around how we would like to see it structured. But we ultimately find out when it comes up. It's also a 3-year agreement. So it's coming up next year. We will get slapped with a 30% increase because it's cumulative, of course. So it makes it a bit fun for those agreements because you get to negotiate it once every 3 years. There is also interesting conditions that may be put on for larger councils that make sense. With amalgamation, it might make more sense for us as well. But the likes of us running E5 across our staff, you no longer had the choice with how the DIA approached their negotiation to have everyone split out from that. So you were left with everyone is either on E5 for the services you need, or everyone is on E3. There was no mixing at that point, which was quite an expensive exercise for us.
The other side of the problem was that it's very difficult, because I know that Google and maybe Amazon Web Services also have the appropriate security and, you know, so forth. We could technically change to one of them, but it would be such a logistical nightmare locally that it would be that people wouldn't do that anyway. Are there ways we can, perhaps through the Simplifying Local Government, look at ways of structuring our IT demand that it can be portable?
So we try to, well, we've gone through an exercise of software as a service, so buying platforms that aren't on those proprietary sort of pieces of software. Data sovereignty, where it's Amazon Web Services or Azure, DIA's already made agreements with them, so we follow all the Records Management Act and things like that for storing our information in Australia. Basically, the Act works on the fact that if it's in an area that is governed by the same sort of regulation as here, then you're all right. So we're ticked off on that box. Australasia itself is very much into an Azure space. If you go to Europe, they're more on Amazon. So our providers and vendors all seem to favour the Azure, so we'd be going to an interesting position if we were to switch without a lot of cost savings from the actual cloud perspective.
Well, you two are going into a real techie hole here in a couple of minutes earlier. I'm just going to pull us back out a little bit and go to France, but yeah, that felt like we were solutioning stuff for a minute there. But
I think you're skipping John.
oh, John, all right.
Yeah, thank you. So IT evolves all the time, changes in 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is, and I can see licensing as a really cunning way on both parties to keep up to date. Is there a cost saving or an operational cost saving that can be shown, even with the likes of the transformation program and everything else across the board, that it's actually prudent to keep switching up with our IT gear?
So that paper that Sven was talking about, the facts figures one that was given to you a few months ago, had some of the savings that we have made. So those were through reducing software licensing as well as automations and efficiencies and integrations that we're going to be doing, or have done and will be doing in the future. We're also looking at how we can utilise AI to automate a bit more and push those through.
All right. France?
Yes.
2 questions. First of all, within our organisation, do we run any software that does not run under the Windows operating system?
We run, well, most applications these days are web-based, so they're sort of system agnostic. If we look at our servers, we are primarily a Windows server used as our operating system. I think we have 2 systems that are back-end ones to help with printing and stuff that run on Linux. But primarily we support Windows. With our enterprise agreement that we have through Microsoft, we don't get charged per a Windows license for those either.
Okay, secondly, do you actually look at because most software systems are all about gathering data, so have you actually looked at the export of data into a common format that other software systems that we might be forced into as part of the Head Start can then be important?
So there are open data standards that are available. A lot of our systems haven't used that. It is one of our selection criteria of an exit process that we would take, that we make sure we can and we understand the terms of exiting out of that software, so that we make sure we don't lock ourselves into something like that.
Thank you. I took on board what Roger said before about, amalgamation may not happen, but is this an opportunity for us to be looking and working with other councils no matter what, and then looking at our licensing? If we look at things like GIS, if we look at things like our asset management and those sorts of things, with data centres and with the web and stuff these days, is there efficiencies, or would there be efficiencies of working with other councils no matter what happens agnostically, and should we be I suppose to Graham's point, looking at what those efficiencies could be no matter what, whether it goes ahead or not?
Yeah, so it was good when we were talking earlier on today, like even if Head Start didn't happen, the hard work and the conversations that have already begun as a result of the Head Start starting to happen suggest that you could have some really useful conversations.
And in that space, we've got the likes of Altitude that we've gone to. It allows you to partner with other councils. So we've started talks with Timaru about potential ways that we can utilise the same resourcing. Objective Build, we're already doing consenting and sharing services in that space. And we've recently moved to ArcGIS, which puts us onto basically the standard of all the councils around us. So we're definitely aligning and finding out ways that we can do that a bit better.
Thank you. I think to Graham's point, another month down the track when we've got a bit of a clearer steer, that's a great opportunity for us to really start planning some kind of deeper dives. Yeah, but look, you go on, Jeremy. An IT question. This is going to be good.
Just in regards to your commentary around the SCADA system and the savings that could be realised when the transition to Southern Waters, is there no other saving there? Just trying to understand that part. When departments dependent on the size of the organisation.
It's very light. So the software that dedicated to managing our water systems has generally got other things happening in it within it as well. So the likes of our asset management system also has our parks data in it. So for a while, until we move that data into another system, we will still have the cost of that one. SCADA is the primary one that only does water, so that one is the one that we could realise as soon as it's taken over. We potentially will have a little bit of Microsoft saving, depending on when that happens. Of course, we're signing up for a 3-year agreement. So if Southern Waters doesn't kick off on July 1st like it's supposed to, then we would hold on to those costs potentially for up to another 3 years, which I prefer not to do, and hopefully the DIA negotiates something that aligns with amalgamation.
Excellent. Thank you, Roger.
Yes, just to illustrate by example with the building software, you've got to remember that software companies are in this business to make money. And so what we've found with the building consenting software, I think they've got circa 44 of the 60-odd BCAs on one platform, which sounds great and has certainly made the inter-BCA working a lot easier. However, the software company now has a pretty near monopoly, and as the reforms have come through, all they've done is increase the per transaction fee. Yeah. And so it hasn't necessarily worked out well for the community or the consumer in the community, because that software fee is passed on to them, and so they're now paying substantially more for a interoperable system that we're benefiting from in their consenting package.
Yeah, so I've got to make $10 a year, so it's either $2 from 5 of you or $5 from 2 of you.
Roger, that one, having recently used it through the customer end, it just seems to be basically a file upload thing. Is there more in the background that makes it more specialised than that, or is there other things out there that we might be able to look to?
The building consenting software. The building consenting software is a complete package that the building inspectors run through when they're processing the consents. It's got a pretty advanced system in it, and there's built-in forms and things like that. So there's very little viable options to change. And if we did change, you've then got all the costly integrations to write with the property files and the back office systems and things like that. So often those integrations, I think the integrations were probably more expensive than the actual change to the software this time, weren't they?
All right, that's enough of that. Dan,
I was just going to add one to that one. If 44 out of the authorities are actually using it, theoretically there's a bit of power there to say actually to the software manufacturer, no, we're not going to take a 10% increase, because if everybody did it en masse, then theoretically there's a power in that as well. They're going to lose a chunk of their revenue.
We have almost no power. When the company that we're now using bought the competition out one by one, the general manager of New Zealand could do it out of his basically his out-of-pocket expenses budget. It's a multinational company, and when he was fined, I think $1 million or $1.5 million by the Commerce Commission, he paid that out of his everyday budget as well.
Yeah. All right, look, we're going to wrap that one up here today, but thank you, Scott. That was a really awesome presentation and great to be able to have the opportunity to ask so many questions and learn so much more about the shop. Thank you. And we can leave that mic on because now it's Amanda's turn.
I think you're probably familiar with what the finance team does, and it's pretty standard, what you'd expect from most businesses and most councils. The main deliverables you'll see from us are the annual report, the annual and long-term plan budgets. We do all rates administration, underlying policies, setting the rates, invoices, all of the process behind that. Treasury management, accounts payable, accounts receivable, all of the asset accounting for every department across the organisation. Tax, although we're not subject to too much income tax, there's still a lot of tax-related work behind the scenes, big GST returns to do each month, and all the other day-to-day operational matters to do with anything finance. We have the most wide-ranging sort of queries that come across our desk every day. Paul touched on before, the size of the finance team was 9 20 years ago. It's actually still 9 now. I've got 12 FTE. 3 of them are in the rates team. We have an unfilled role, the accounting manager role, and uncertainty about what that will look like in the future. So, yeah, it hasn't grown in the 20 years. It's pretty standard financial service and fully reliant on the size and scope of the rest of the organisation. So we have a large degree of other departments and things to look after to complete these receivables and creditors and just completing that analyst role, keeping an eye on their budgets and things for them. So that's what we do on a day-to-day. And then obviously in terms of that, a big part of that is all those internal financing costs for the organisation land in the in the financial services department. So all the bank fees, any loan subsidies when we give grants out to other organisations and things, waters levies, bad debts, all the collection to do with them, a few other minor administration costs, all the valuation costs sit within our team, the cost of financial advisors like Bancorp, solicitors. When we provide the rates remissions, that comes through this GL, and we have some overheads to other departments such as digital services. Obviously, we rely on them a lot, and then a big chunk of our costs is the personnel costs that are doing all of those tasks. So I guess just in winding up, we are quite, when waters goes, obviously can be like a big part of our organisation, and it represents quite a lot of our, like a big portion of our figures. But when you think of it in terms of our workload, it doesn't necessarily correspond. So a waters, like the typical creditor's workload for waters might be multi-million-dollar contracts and invoices that come through, and it looks like a big amount and compared to our overall spend, but they're just simple. They've been through lots of people before they reach us, and it's those little ones. It could be $100 invoices here and there and little reimbursements and all these other things that we can spend hours on. So it doesn't necessarily directly correlate exactly the size of the department, like the waters department, doesn't correlate to the decrease in what you'd expect to see in the finance team. In terms of levers that we can pull, we're very, that depends on what the rest of the organisation does. So if we reduce our levels of service or change other departments, move them to CCOs and things, that's the only way that can affect the size and responsibility of the finance team.
Thank you. I'd argue that you're already pulling some levers. You've got a budget of 12 FTE, and as you've had movements within the team, you haven't raced out and filled those yet on the basis that you think that you can share some of the workload around. So I think there's already, levers that you're pulling in that space now. Who's got it? John.
Thank you for that. I'm still a bit confused. I like to work in hard copy. So what is an FTE? So 12 FTE is how many people?
So it's a full-time equivalent. So typically a role is a 40-hour week at council. So if we had someone that was only doing 20 hours a week, they're 0.5 or half of a full-time equivalent. So but most of all of my staff work 40-hour weeks, so that equates to one person. One FTE is one person in finance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's right. Thank you.
Exactly. Any other questions of Amanda? Boy, oh boy, that was a simple, painless one, wasn't it? Look at that. Thank you. I'm conscious that everybody's been sitting down for a long time, and you might want to have like a 5-minute break, and we've got 5 minutes back. So, does anybody want to take 5 minutes just to stretch and recalibrate? Let's do that. 4:15 kickoff. Yep. Alrighty. We're gonna crack back into it. Ray, back to your seat. Look, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming back on time, and welcome, Ashwin. First 15 odd days in, please.
Yes, thank you. And, just less than 3 weeks in the business. And again, it's an absolute privilege to come and share what the People and Capability team does. And obviously, a good time also to reflect on a few things that has been part of my discovery. And also before I start, I think one of the things Paul mentioned, and that was absolutely critical, was please go easy on me. Right. So, in essence, the People and Capability team, we are all about fostering a culture where people feel safe, valued, and at the same time developed as well. So, a few things that we do in People and Capability is recruitment. Onboarding. Then comes the learning and development piece, where we make sure that the employees get role-specific programs, and at the same time, as they transition in the organization, there are going to be leadership trainings, and there's obviously a pathway that gets created for them. And this is also going to be part of of my reflection, which I'll share with you later. Other than that, it's payroll, and I find that this was in the PAR report on some of the complications of what we do in payroll, which again is going to be part of a few things I share later. The other thing that we are really focused on now is also health and safety. It's good that we have a resource in People and Capability that is dedicated to ensuring a culture of safety in the council. We are all about culture uplift, engagement, workforce planning, and employment relations. Now, this is apart from the fact that we also have to ensure that the council it obliges with all the relevant legislations that we have to follow, like the Employment Relations Act, Public Holidays. The Holidays Act. We have also the Health and Safety Act, and amongst other things, Privacy Act, etc. So what I've been able to see in the last 2.5 weeks is, looking at the FD we have, and also looking at, the range of services we provide. Now, the fact is, we are a small but a very critical, team in the council, because the managers, the individuals, the councillors, everyone pretty much, obviously deals with the People and Capability team. Now, just a very few, reflections in this 2.5 weeks. There is obviously a lot that we could do than what we currently are doing, and there's a few things that I picked up on just as I joined the room. So the first thing is when it comes to payroll, and obviously I do understand, that the council has, concerns on OPEX. So that's one of the things that, is going to be a future lever for us, considering that payroll at the moment is outsourced. So we've started having, sort of a deep dive into payroll and what are things that are working for us, what are some of the constraints we have, the man hours that we are putting in for payroll every fortnight, and also the understanding of the systems we have. So that is one thing that we definitely want to do, is to unlock some OPEX. here, whether it is through negotiating a contract, whether it is letting go of the vendor and trying to bring in the payroll in-house. So those are some considerations that obviously is going to be part of the plan. This is definitely a project that we will undertake in the first 3 months and come up with a decision which is best for the council. And at the same time, we also are able to maintain the integrity of payroll moving forward. The other things, obviously that I've been able to pick up on and is, the range of digital services or products that we have and how best we can leverage of this. So there is some early observations. When I came in the room, I, again, heard about the engagement surveys, that the council has run. Now, for me, I'm passionate about the employee ENPS. The ENPS surveys are critical because it gives us data and health of our culture. Now, that's one of the things that I will, would definitely want to, leverage on and also do, maybe increase the frequency of ENPS surveys so that we are able to get real-time data on the sentiments of our people, what is working, what is not, so that it helps us create or formulate people's strategies so that we are able to uplift the culture. At this stage, our ENPS is quite low. And frankly speaking, this is one of the first times I've seen an organization have such a, engagement score. So that is priority number one, is how we uplift culture. What are we doing now versus what we should be doing? Now, it is, Rome was not built in a day, so I'm very cognizant of the challenges we have, both internally and externally. So it's one of the things that we definitely are looking at. And also from an accountability perspective, how do we strengthen our performance management framework is also one of the, of the reflections in the 2.5 weeks of discovery. The other things generally is, looking at the landscape of the council is, how do we build the organizational resilience through, very well thought out succession planning strategies. I think that is very critical that the council, I understand and appreciate there's a few things in progress like the voters conversation and also the Head Start. But I think what is important is while we are continuing the journey, it is important for an organization to be resilient, and resiliency is through training and development. Resiliency is through having an internal talent pipeline so that we do not have to look outside or externally for any critical recruitment, but we have backfills in the business itself. So that's also one of the things that is top of mind, and something that I did touch on is the culture aspect, because I think you get the culture right, that is when people feel valued, they feel heard, they feel supported, and I think through that, we are able to fuel up successful performance. We have productivity across the business. All the indices, all the matrices that we have of the business starts to improve once the employees are engaged. So that's one of the major challenges we have in people and capability. Now, from a voters conversation perspective, and looking at all the things that we want to achieve from what is currently happening, I feel that the current FTE that we have, though through the voters restructure or once the project concludes, I feel that there is going to be a certain percentage of time that is going to be unlocked from the people and capabilities schedule, but that doesn't mean I don't envisage a reduction in this case. But whatever discretionary time we have, I think could be well utilized in making sure that we're able to do everything, or we're able to cover all the bases when it comes to people and capability, and how this space should ideally look in the council, so that we can go from a negative 29 to a very strong positive number. I think that's the ambition. The organization that I was in, our ENPS was around 63. We managed to grow it in the 4 years from 20s to 60s. So the ambition definitely is to go from 29 to perhaps a not a negative number, and then continue to chip away and make sure that we have a healthy and a positive culture here in Waitaki District Council.
Thank you. That's a challenging job in the next kind of 6 or 12 months when we've got a waters program. That means there's a whole lot of staff that don't quite know where going to be at the end of it, and we've got a head start conversation going on as well, where there's lots of potential amalgamations. So whatever you can do to try and help with the culture will be massively appreciated. This is a quick question for Amanda. We talked before about software costs and the fact that we've got things like, you've got the finance system that does a lot of the payroll bits and pieces going on, but then we've got like Employment Hero as well. In the pie chart, where do they come in? Does finance foot the bill for the payroll system?
So Scott mentioned all digital services across the organisation. All those direct software costs are in digital services now, so they're all sitting in there.
So it comes through as an overhead?
Yeah, so it's direct cost, the software licenses that we saw back in digital services, and then it gets overheaded from him to other departments.
Yeah, because one of the conversations that we had, Ashwin, earlier was where you've already, in the couple of weeks that you've been here, you've had a look and thought, hang on, we might not need all of that.
Yes, that is correct, because again, I've had a review of the process, and again, I'm also aware this is just 2 weeks. So what I'm trying to do is to go through 2 or 3 payroll cycles just to understand what the the team actually does. Fantastic. And where the complications are. And also, I had a very interesting conversation with Amanda as well last week on how things were before. So I think the plan of action here is to reach out to the neighbouring councils, and something I wish to do next week and the week after is what sort of systems they use, and be able to understand how did they manage it, and the volume of work that is required in pushing payroll every fortnight. So I think that's that should be the cue, for us to take from, and then again we will take stock of the situation and obviously make a decision. But I think the confidence I'd like to give is one of the things we want to do obviously is to unlock OPEX savings, and again, whichever shape or form, but definitely is something that we want to do.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll just touch on there just to confirm Timaru has the authority financial system as well, which does have the payroll module, so it is a logical step there. They're in our Head Start group. Yep.
Well, that's what Graham sort of was speaking to before, and it's a lovely segue for Graham's question to come through now.
All I'll say is music to my ears.
Oh, look at that.
I'll leave it at that.
Oh, excellent. Sven?
It might be a question for Paul, because it relates to the organisational chart from a year ago. Is this department a bit lighter on staff now? There's about 7 positions on that organisational chart, but that's not necessarily FTE, is it?
No, it's not necessarily FTE, but were some roles, fixed-term roles taken on during transformation because of the level of change of position descriptions and other things like that. So they've those agreements have come to an end and sort of gone back to a more stable level in the P&C team.
All right. Any more quick, Franz? Oh, sorry. Excellent. Any more questions of Ashwin? I think it was a really thorough intro. Oh, you do have one now?
I do. In terms of the payroll system, you already indicated that it's run external, but how do you view that it actually run in Australia? Therefore, we always have this time difference to deal with.
So I think that was definitely one of the conversations that I had with the people and culture team, the response times, from the contractor. But what I can say is, the last payroll cycle and then today, it's, the response has been, as expected. And so one of the things, as I've mentioned, is the contractor, the engagement with the contractor is definitely something that is going to be reviewed, because my understanding is, again, from all the years that I've been in HR, is there has to be separation of duties, and then when separation of duties means that the HR does the key in when it comes to payroll details of the employees, and the checks and the processing has to be done by the finance team, and unless we do so, then we fail in our duties in terms of segregation of payroll. So that's the one of the other things that we definitely are looking at is how do we make sure that we have a process in place where audit checks are done. There is there is handshakes between HR and payroll, and when we do have payroll cycles, there is no mistakes whatsoever, because in people and culture, the only thing, the most fundamental is payroll, and then it is my understanding that we can never go wrong with payroll. Salary has to come on time. It has to be the right amount. There should be no remedial action once the payroll cycle is completed. So that is an ambition, and therefore we will see what is best for the council while being able to save on OPEX.
All right. Thank you. Sven, last one.
Yeah, probably more for Amanda. I was just looking across in a lot of these, and there's a internal overhead for the council HQ. Is that on an FTE basis, or is it on a per square metre basis that we could compare with the private market to sort of judge our performance on the cost of providing the building?
I think it is FTE. It's either like building space utilised or FTE, but it's quite direct to the size of the department. And obviously the departments that aren't in the HQ building itself have like T Street and West Street building costs instead. So yeah, I think it is FTE, which is pretty much the equivalent to the building space that they occupy. So it's as direct as possible.
Would we be able to get the figure at some point to make that comparison?
The figure of the actual HQ building cost that's divided between everyone.
Yeah, either the total cost or the per square metre cost. We could just sort of judge our own performance of efficiency of providing the building.
As a landlord.
As our own landlord, I suppose. That's a common thing you'd probably do in private business to assess whether you, when you're your own landlord. But also because it's an old building, and I just wonder about the efficiency of it sometimes.
We spend a lot of money on the roof.
It's got a good roof.
Yeah, let's not go there. All righty, I'm going to wrap that one up now. But thank you, Ash, and welcome aboard. That was a big ask for your first 3 weeks in, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, well, Mark, you've got 7 seconds to hobble your way over. You can take as long as you need.
Thanks for the opportunity to present the PMO to the committee. So you might have heard through transformation, the objective was to create a focused council-wide view on project delivery with clearer governance over scope, budget, risks, decisions and delivery. So from that we got the PMO. Now the PMO is basically made up of other, I suppose, FTEs that were through transformation positioned in the PMO in their new roles. We started out transformation with an FTE of 12, and we're currently sitting at 8.7, just through natural, through resignations, and we had 2 fixed terms that came to an end and they moved on to other roles. So currently we feel that we're right sized for what we're delivering at the moment through the next annual plan process. So the PMO is more than just a group of project managers. It's actually council's project delivery system, not something we had before. So it's people, it's the framework, it's governance, it's tools, it's reporting, and it's assurance all working together. So the council project framework has been set up, provides defined stages, responsibilities, information requirements and approval points from the initial proposal through to closure. Again, we did not have this oversight of projects in the past. They just appeared in the LTP and got approved or whatever and delivered through the departments. primarily as contracts more than anything, as opposed to being managed as a project. We have supported our project managers by bringing in the SODA software, which is primarily a New Zealand-based software support that was used by Hamilton District Council first for their project management office, and so we found it easier for that to come our way as well. It was because the modules had already been set up, so we're actually able to bring them into the Waitaki to support our project management systems. But also we're actually, before we did that, we made sure it was going to integrate with finance and other key information that we were required to actually integrate with. So the SODA support gives the managers, the project managers, helps them go through the stages and gives our governance consistent reporting on scope, program, budget risks, issues, decisions and status. We also trained our project managers, so they are now certified Prince 2, understanding that Prince 2 is a global method for project delivery. So that is the foundation for our project framework and project delivery, but we're not like, we're using it as a guidance for delivering Waitaki's projects, because it doesn't necessarily need that much intense oversight. So it's I suppose fit for purpose depending on the size of the delivery. Portfolio oversight allows council to see projects collectively rather than separate initiatives being delivered in departmental silos. And we deliver or lead the delivery of capital and strategic projects across council, also providing that consistent governance, procurement and contract coordination, risk management reporting. The role's actually broader than just delivering construction assets. We're also supporting complex time-bound organisational-wide work, such as the current one at the moment is the long-term plan. And previously we assisted with the local elections. These assignments also require clear ownership, integrated planning, dependency management, reporting and governance, which are the same disciplines that support successful capital delivery. The PMO is, I suppose the way it's been set up, is now a central professional service that manages or maintains council's procurements and contract disciplines and preserves organisational knowledge. And those are key aspects, especially in the preservation of organisational knowledge and following the procurement rules, government rules of procurement. So all our team is trained in those particular aspects, but the organisational knowledge is key in regards to that. If you get, say, an external agency to deliver your project, you don't necessarily have the ownership, and you don't necessarily end up with the knowledge of what went wrong, what were the lessons learned, and some of those other aspects that our team is actually starting to put together. Regardless of the changes that may be in the future, we still require disciplined project delivery, budget control, risk management, governance and assurance, and this sits best in a central professional council service. Looking ahead, so when Southern Waters first came to Oamaru to present where they were heading, we actually were able to give them a presentation. During that presentation, we actually spoke with Fiona about the possibility of the PMO delivering projects for the water services. So that's been put on the table there, understanding that we're actually delivering water services currently. Some of those projects are multiple years, and it may be that they wish us to continue delivery of those even maybe in the second year, depending on how well set up they are. We've also had a meeting, so we had a request from a large council just north of us, and they wanted to know how our project management was being structured, and so we had a 2-hour meeting with them and we actually outlined what we were doing. They were very excited about what we offered, and as they are currently delivering their project managers through the silo departmental way, and they're wanting to bring it all together into one particular business. So there's an opportunity there in the future also to be able to say, well, listen, you can actually do project management from anywhere. And so that is our opportunity with the team that we're building.
Excellent, thank you. I can see that Graham's got a question online, but I just was going to crack in with a quick one first. You mentioned before that you're now, as a PMO, overseeing the LTP as a project, but aside from that, like, what percentage of the work that you do is related to projects based around capital expenditure? 90%?
Yes, would sit around 90% of the capital.
Okay, and you just said then that you've spoken to Southern Waters about some of the projects that are halfway through and you'd hand over. Let's assume that as part of the transition across to Southern Waters, you transitioned across those projects as well. What percentage of the remaining work that you do would that be? If you've got 90% CapEx projects, is it 50% water, 30% roading, 10% parks and rec?
It's about that, yes. So the numbers show it's just slightly plus 50% of water, and then 40 for roading, and then we go into parks, and then there's other little bits and pieces, planning, as well as digital services.
Cool, thank you. Graham.
Yeah, the last couple of minutes of your presentation was also music to the ears, but I know there's a number of small councils out there that can't afford and don't have the skill set to be able to set up their own PMO. Could we turn the PMO office into a business unit as opposed to a cost centre and start looking laterally at where we can provide services outwards, not only to our potential future partners, in a Head Start project, but also maybe even thinking outside that?
That is certainly an opportunity. We see the way that we've built the team, that we can offer our services. We would need to probably build some capability, but at the same time we can offer services to particularly our neighbours, and be able to provide them with some project management.
John.
I suppose we were the last ones to come on the block and just got what was left over.
I guess it's related to CapEx as well. So, you know, like the time of a project manager, get a lot of that time, like 90% of their time, related to the CapEx program. And so the direct hours of doing that, and also the overheads associated with the council of holding that role, so like your laptop, providing all the soda system and all that sort of stuff, needs to go as part of that picture, and it does get capitalised to the asset as well. So we try to put the direct costs into the department as much as possible, and then just rest assured that it's not necessarily, doesn't all stay as an expense. A lot of it can reach the balance sheet. It results in an asset.
There we go. Any other questions for Mark? Franz?
Mark, just checking. So if you, a little bit following up on what Graham said, if you have to bring a new project manager on board within your team, is there actually a process to follow, as in what a new member learns, what steps he has to go through and what things he has to comply with? I think about, you know, post-project reports, all that sort of thing. Have you got an actual process through that?
Yes, we have. So through the framework and through the software that SODA's providing, we actually have staged delivery of a project, and so you can't move from one stage to another until you finish the stage you're in. So that is actually a really good stage gate in project delivery. So, and when we're looking for bringing in new people, we actually had that opportunity at the beginning. So some of the I suppose assigned staff to the project management office actually were successful in getting other roles within the transformation. So we had some vacancies, we actually brought in 3 experienced project managers, and that actually helped embed the practices of project management with our new internal team, who are just used to being able to do like contract delivery. So, so through those processes, we're actually able to embed new people quite easily.
All of them go through Prince.
Yeah, so that's right. So we put them through the Prince 2 training as well, so they're Prince 2 certified, so that gives them a good, really, background to project delivery.
Are the roading projects as tricky as the water project? Do they require the same level of oversight and framework and analysis?
So
That's just like
it
a
just
yes. It's just like a
depends.
yes/no.
So
Hopefully.
not quite. Well, so currently we're working. It can be complex if you have to include other agencies. So NZTA, for instance, if we are impacting on their network, we need to understand what the requirements are, plus also there's the funding part of it. If we're working with, and we are currently, we've got 2 projects that include Kiwi Rail sites. So that's a complexity in its own, where it's really good to have project management oversight on that to actually keep all that moving, and we've been quite successful. So Hillgrove Maraki Road, it's rehab, so roading rehab, that started it off. Let Kiwi Rail know that it was in our plans. They come back to us and said, hey, we want to do that crossing up. We'll do it at the same time. We're going to bring forward our funding so that we can fit in with your timelines. So that turned around slightly because Kiwi Rail have to order their specialised equipment. It could only be here on a certain part of the year, and so we've successfully tendered that contract, and it is being currently set up to actually deliver our job and Kiwi Rail's job at the same time.
Okay.
So
but that's an example of a relatively extreme sort of like a case, but in general, you'd expect that the roading stuff's not as tricky from a project, from a PMO perspective, as the water stuff.
Not always.
Right, that's the end of my. It's enough of my question. I'm not going to go. Franz, last one, I think.
Yeah, no, just getting back to my previous questions as well, about the system and the framework that you operated. So, am I right to assume that within your framework is very strongly regimented how the data and the learnings of a particular project is shared, and that goes towards resilience if one project manager resigns or moves away or whatever, that another project manager can actually pick it up?
That is definitely what we're got in place to record, especially in the lessons learned files, which is, of course, you should go to before you start a project of a similar nature as well. So yes, that is in place and as part of our project delivery system.
Awesome. I'm going to wrap that up there. Thank you very much for coming in, especially when you're lame.
Thank you.
Cheers. Toby, floor's yours.
Right, I'll keep this pretty quick, so there's plenty of time for questions afterwards. So, so our portfolio and facilities is made up of about 320 assets across 280 odd sites, a total value of about $400 million. So even though we're called the facilities team, they're not all buildings and structures and playgrounds and things. A lot of our assets are the harbour breakwater, the harbour channel entrance that we monitor and have to get dredged periodically, water fountains, bridges within the public gardens. We also, with the building assets that we do look after, we've got about 20 operational and commercial properties. There's 46 public toilets across our whole district, which is from, as far south as Palmerston to Fulston. So 91 community housing units as well that we look after and maintain, 5 council-owned houses. So with the, so we look after the fleet as well, the administration of all our cleaning contracts, security contracts. We look after all our capital renewals, capital replacements for our buildings as well. So part of that as well is our Building Act compliance on all of those buildings that are occupied, making sure all our buildings have current building warrant of fitnesses. All our buildings have current fire evacuation schemes, fire evacuation plans, making sure all of the IQPs are doing their inspections to keep our compliance schedules up to date. So, yeah, so that's, so we've got a staff of, well, we're 5.2 FTE, so I've got a crew of our own builders or maintenance men as well, so we keep that in-house, which gives us a lot of flexibility on reactive maintenance, so we don't have to wait on contractors. We can prioritise a lot of our work as well, so we can bulk it up into areas. So instead of having one of our crew down in Palmerston to fix one job, we can backload them up to make it worthwhile to send somebody down into different areas. So I've been in with council for coming up 8 years. Most of that has been with the original property team before transformation. I did a little bit of a stint with Three Waters as a project engineer as well. So I come from a construction background. I'm a qualified builder, did my apprenticeship in Oamaru, ran my own business for almost 20 years, employed my own staff, trained my own apprentices, moved through to managing an area for a residential franchise housing company, and learned a lot of processes and how important they are to build efficiencies in how you do things, which is where, I guess, in the private sector is where your profits are made. So a lot of those learnings through my building career, I've brought into this role with me. I treat these buildings like they're my own. I run the team like it's my own business. And yeah, that's...
And you've done, like, it's gone between, sometimes you've outsourced things and then you have people in, and you've got a pretty sweet model now in terms of, you know, the way that it runs. Obviously, you still have to call the sparkies and the plumbers and get different people in to do different stuff.
Still reliant on plumbers and electricians. But yeah, the fact that we don't have to call in external builders, obviously from a background coming from that sector, I know how they price work. You know, there's always profit, there's margins, contingencies always factored into everything. So by having our own staff does away with a lot of that. The way I've also structured our team is we've got one qualified builder, we've got a handyman, and then we've got a junior, a property assistant. So
that's the point two.
Yeah, point two of a qualified tradesman. So that gives us flexibility for a lot of our work. It's not all building work, it's preventative maintenance as well. So we're cleaning out gutters, we're spraying for lichen and mould, we're weed killing. So that allows us to put the right skill set to those jobs. So we're not paying a qualified builder to go and clean gutters out, to spray weeds. It's freed up a lot of having that lower skilled capacity within the team. Has freed up our builder now to undertake work that we would have originally, or we used to subcontract out to builders. We now have that capacity within our team to manage all of that stuff. And that works twofold as well. When we've got our builders on site, quite often they go onto those sites eyes wide open. They're picking up a lot of other work while they're there. So while they're on site, even if an issue hasn't been reported, if they can see there's a problem there, they'll just fix it while they're on site, which we don't get dealing with a contractor. So
and Southern Waters, like, unless you get rid of a whole chunk of buildings, when you go across, it doesn't change a lot for you.
It doesn't really. So since we've gone through transformation, we've onboarded all of Waters' building infrastructure. But because a lot of that maintenance is actually carried out by their operators at the moment, we've not onboarded those buildings as far as planned maintenance goes. So we've had a little bit of work on a couple of the sites, but it's just been reactive. So really, we've had very, very little to do with water infrastructure or water buildings to date.
Thank you. Graham, I see you have a question, sorry.
Yep, two potentially, Chair. Newbie question, 91 community housing units, are they council ones or are you doing that for someone else?
No, they're all council-owned buildings.
Yep, okay. Thinking about the revised section 11A and the 5 core areas, I wonder whether, in fact, that's going to be something we've got to think about down the track. But given your background, and I see your revenue is entirely, save a few fines and things, coming from council overheads, can we get external invoicing into that somehow and create another business unit? Sorry to use that word again.
So you mean like splitting off the facilities side of it and creating like...
Doing it for external non-council people and charging them for it?
It's a possibility, but we'd have to grow the team exponentially. We're sort of struggling with the resources we've got to keep on top of the properties we do have. Pre-transformation, we had about 180 assets we looked after. So we're still sitting about the same FTE, and that our portfolio's doubled.
Yeah. I was just thinking you may be able to then get your own plumber and Sparky and actually develop a unit and
you could have a building company business again, Toby. It's just what you want. Any others, Graham?
No.
Sven, you had a question.
Yeah, I think it might have just been answered. I'd look at the amount of buildings you're looking after and 5.2 FTE, and I was wondering whether there's a bow wave of work building up ahead, or whether you're keeping on top of it, or whether it's easy.
I'd like to think we're keeping up on top of it. We're still waiting for asset planning to develop further to start giving us, I guess, capital replacement programs and things like that. So we actually get a better view of, I guess, the long-term picture of our buildings, so we can start sort of sizing ourselves or looking at how we deal with a lot of those capital replacements or capital renewals.
And a lot of that stuff's external too, right? If we look at what we were doing with the hospital building, we still don't really have that one nutted down in terms of the future asset management plan, because we were so reliant on external parties and they weren't really...
Yeah, 100%. And we're probably quite lucky at the moment because we've got our guys on most of our sites on a fairly regular basis. I'm pretty confident there's no surprises waiting for us. We've got a fair idea of the condition of our building assets anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I believe we can keep carrying on the way we are for quite a few years to come, without having to have any capital replacement plans in place. We know what condition our buildings are in.
Mel.
Just to note, the asset management plans are being worked on as part of the long-term plan, so we'll bring that through as part of the process, including the hospital buildings.
Mel.
This might be dealt with, or likely to be dealt with, through something like the asset management plan, but I look at things like our heritage buildings and would love an understanding of how much we spend for those sort of things, and whether or not there could be an opportunity there with the Civic Trust moving forward. I think there's a conversation to be had, and that's around our amalgamation as well, as to how we best protect our assets. And so if things aren't performing but they have a historical value, or if they cost us a lot but potentially someone with a different skill set and ability to go about things differently might do things differently, just whether or not we consider that through processes.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. So over the years, we've been lucky enough to have quite a lot of reports and heritage consultants involved in buildings that we own. So to some degree, we're probably actually a little bit ahead of Whitestone Civic Trust as far as how we go about maintaining our buildings. We're lucky with some of the consultants we'd used in the past have got a really good understanding of heritage limestone buildings, and how we look after them has been based on information we've been given over the years. So, yep, I believe there's room because we've got the same shared interest as Whitestone Civic Trust to maintain these buildings for as long as we can at the lowest cost possible. And definitely there's room for sharing information and resources between the two of us.
Well, through the chair, I just wonder if we go further than that and whether or not, if these buildings are costing us massively, there is potential for probably more external funding when it comes to some of the different projects that we might do. If you're sitting in a group like Whitestone Civic Trust, and I also guess we just need to look at the lens of if some of our buildings are expensive to run and don't make a lot of sense, and you get into a much wider grouping of councils and they're looking for cost savings, which is something we should always be looking for, how do we as a community make sure we don't walk away from the things that we hold dear? And, you know, is there a different role in that? And I don't know what that looks like, but I just want us to be aware of it when we're thinking, because it's not just a sharing of information thing. I feel like this is a deeper ownership conversation that we might need to have. Just putting it out there because at the moment, you know, if someone argues around a council table at some stage, hey, this isn't the best building here to operate out of, and we could just go down the road and jump into this one, which is
new and sparkly.
You know, there's just those kind of things at play, and I think that they're reasonable questions, and maybe there's a conversation to be had there.
It's a good thing for us to think about when we're looking across the assets, and especially when we're looking towards amalgamation, like the risk of losing what we deem as being really heritage properties, because part of a bigger ship thinks that they're a bit of old junk is kind of not cool. Hey, John, you had a last question?
It's the same thing on that pie graph, and I'm hoping that it's overheads and not consultants. Could you explain what that is, please?
It's overheads.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I seen it as well. Yeah, I think Amanda can confirm that they're overheads. I think the consultants is that we find slither that you can barely see on that pie graph.
John loves that answer.
Yeah. What would have been good is some percentages down beside them just to clarify.
John loves that answer. A fine slither of consultant. All right, thanks, Toby.
Right, all good.
Last of the session, Arlene, you've been very patient.
Good afternoon. I won't keep you long. The governance services team supports the elected members and supports the democratic process in the district. And yeah, we're happy to work with you and help you make really good decisions. So I'll open up to questions.
Excellent. Yeah, I think you do a great job.
Oh, thank you, Simon.
John?
Just made the comment, we're very cheap to run and look at these graphs. I think we're the most economical of the lot. Thank you.
Yeah, this is not your cost centre. Mel?
Well, I think there is something in that, though, that, you know, the amount that has to be done, especially around the requirements and the number of meetings we do run and how much more we keep throwing at your team. 2 staff members in that mix, you know, it is very light on that, and I note that has its challenges with that, and I guess the workload we put on you, but I certainly don't see there being any ability to cut down on that, because I think we more than get
No, look, I look at
value.
I look at even just my observation over the past 4 years of the sheer volume increase in the number of meetings and committee meetings and workshops and things that you guys have to run, and the requirements to have so much online and public and available. And if I look at the evolution of the function over the course of the past 4 years, I have absolutely no questions of it whatsoever. But Sven does.
Yeah, likewise. I think because we're in almost daily contact, I think we understand this area quite well, but I'd also acknowledge that these workshops were not part of the original plan, and that was part of the immense workload that we put on you to rejig the calendar as well. So yeah, thank you for that.
I'm glad we could make it work. Yeah.
Thank you. Nothing else. Oh, you've got one, Sven.
Sven?
Sorry, Franz. I'm still thinking over here.
We are not related, just for the record.
My life was in his hands yesterday.
Arlene, Ali, I think they're doing a great job. not only from what they do on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis, but also in terms of helping new councillors like myself, providing answers to things we don't know about. I know that this is a workshop, we can't put resolutions up, but it breaks my heart every time on a Tuesday morning and I see Arlene walking down the road. I reckon Arlene should get a parking spot down below. I'm pretty sure there's a vacant one there. And you might all laugh and grin about it, but the fact of the matter is we get an emergency meeting, somebody's got to keep the minutes and it's got to come in, whether it's on the weekend or on Monday, it doesn't really matter. And we cannot have these meetings or a workshop or urgent discussions without having either Ali or Arlene present, because minutes have to be taken and resolutions have to be taken down. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, let's work on that then. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Councillor, and all of you. It's a really challenging role, but we do get a lot out of it. And I did, because this workshop will be public, I did want to explain for those people who don't understand, there's a misperception in the community that councillor pay and remuneration is something that can be moved up or down by this body, and I just wanted to make it clear for people calling for cuts that it's not possible for this council to reduce or increase the remuneration of the elected members without breaking the law, because it's all determined by Parliament in Wellington. So I just wanted to put that comment on the record.
Thank you. Sven, in closing?
Yeah, the start of the term, you outlined a lot of improvements that you were hoping to make, and we've seen quite a lot of them already, like the resolution register and things like that. I was just wondering what other improvements you had in store, if any.
I was actually going to meet with Ali tomorrow and talk about that. We both did an AI training course last week looking at using artificial intelligence to write minutes, and that is something that other councils are now moving forward on, and it was very interesting, so that's something we're looking at. But apart from that, I'm just working on a work program for the next year, so when I've got that sorted, I'll send it through to you.
Awesome. Thank you, and thank you both. I think the words you've heard around here kind of reflect the value that we all see in the function. So thank you. That wraps up the public session for today. And so, pardon me? No, that wraps up the public session, then we're going to move into public excluded.
So,
yeah, so we're just going to give Ali a couple of minutes to turn the recording off.